Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a few different things, but most specifically I'm going to show you guys how to basically do a very simple score on a whitetail deer. And then I also want to use that to talk about the deer that I plan on hunting this year, which we'll get into that in a second. But sorry for the slightly awkward camera angle, but I do not have a dining room table or any sort of table that is convenient to actually film this, but I did want to talk about it, and a lot of you on my other social platforms have been asking what this deer what this deer scores. So we're gonna get into that and I'm gonna show you, so let's do it. Okay, so the first thing you're going to want to do, obviously if you're scoring, which I'm going to be scoring sheds, so it's a little bit more difficult than if it were to be on a full head like this, because you also have to get the spread. So usually when you're scoring sheds, it's just a guess as to how wide they are. But as a comparison, this is my Missouri buck that I shot last year. I have not scored him, but I would say he's maybe just shy of 120, 115, 120, somewhere in there. And I mean, I could totally score him, but I'm really interested in this set right here. But you're basically going to need a pen and paper and obviously a tape measure, which a flexible one is preferred. It's just easier to use and bend because you're going to be doing round measurements. And yeah, that's pretty much all you need, and I will get started. So first you're going to divide it between the left and right sides, and basically what you're going to do is you're going to make a column for each point. So if I can get this to focus, there we go. Okay, so each point has a name. So your brow tines are considered your G1, G2, G3, G4, and etc. if you would have more. This end point is your main beam, and that's the same for both sides. And then any little stickers. So this deer, for example, is what would be considered a non-typical, where this is a typical. Typicals are supposed to be symmetrical on both sides, but they can also have points that are non-typical points, which are any extra points that differ from the other side. So this deer, for example, would have a G1, a G2, a G3, and then this, if you're going to go by Maine, Boone and Crockett, and or Pope and Young, this point would be deducted if it were not the same on both sides, which would significantly lower this deer's score. But just for the sake of scoring it, I'm the kind of person that I don't go by official rules because I'm not out here breaking any kind of records. So if there is a point there, so long as it is over 1 inch long, I count it. So I would count that on that deer. But this deer is going to be scored as a typical set. And I'm gonna honestly, I don't know if this is quite an inch. He actually broke it off in the back, as you can see, if we will get in focus. Maybe right here. You can see this was chipped off for whatever reason, but I'm gonna see if that's an inch long and I'm gonna count it. So anyway, that's just your basic. So your G1, G2, he has out to a G4. And then your H's are what are going to be your mass measurements. And it does not matter how many points a deer has, you only get 4. So your first is your base measurement, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So even if he had another point or 2 points or whatever, you would still only get 4 for your total score. And then you just have to measure out your main beams as well. So from the base all the way out to the end on both sides. And then finally, I'm gonna hold it up and guess what I think his spread is and use that as my main measurement. Most whitetails are typically anywhere from 15 to 17 inches wide. Any wider than that and you're getting a pretty big buck, but that's just the average. So I will probably use about 15 or 16 inches for this one, mostly because I think he is a more tall, tight kind of deer rather than a wider one, just based on the direction his tines are. I try to get the brow tines to go straight up and then the main beam be pretty level, and that's usually the spread that I go with. So I'll have to look a little closer, but somewhere in there. Okay, so now that I have my score sheet up and ready to go, I'm going to tell you a little bit of history about this deer. As you guys know, for anyone who has seen my video where I found these, this deer had only been bedding. Actually, he was bedding in the same area as the deer that I had shot this past year. I found his sheds less than 100 yards from where I shot my deer, so that got me super excited. So for anybody who's seen it, they know that I was very excited about this because this is a deer I can actually hunt. I love shed hunting. I think it's super fun, just finding sheds, and just, you know, you just never know where you're gonna find them, and so it's cool when you do. But the fact that I can actually hunt this deer just makes it like way better for me. So I don't know, I just think it's really cool to have history with a buck, especially when I'm hunting public land. It's really difficult to be able to say, oh yeah, I have a target buck, or you know, a lot of times you won't even see the same deer twice simply because of pressure. So to be able to have a really good quality deer, which I believe is going to either be a 3 or 4 year old this coming year, that's just really cool to me, because I've never had that opportunity to hunt a kind of deer like that on public. So that being said, I'm excited to be able to hunt him, and I found both of his sheds as a match set in his bedding, so that is pretty much where I'm going to be starting my season. Is I'm going to be after this guy. So anyway, with that being said, let's get started. I think I'm going to name him Blade. I'm not really one to name deer unless I can actually hunt them and have history with them. But because his brow tines are seriously so bladed, they look like knife edges. So and they're both like that. If you turn them this way, they don't look bladed. They look normal, and then you turn sideways and it's like daggers on there. So that is cool to me. I love deer with character, and he's got a lot of character on his bases, and just the fact that his brows are bladed like that is just, it's just unique. So I think I'm gonna name him Blade. So from here on out, if you guys hear me referring to any buck that I'm hunting called Blade, it will be this deer. And I think he will be super easy to pick out if I see him in person, simply for the character on his bases. And I think he's probably going to be the biggest one around, so if I see him, I think I'll know. But anyway, let's get started scoring him, because I'm anxiously awaiting to see what he will be. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do is start with all of the tine lengths. So we'll start with the G1 and or brow tine. So what you want to do when you're scoring is pretty much draw a line around that is like even with the main beam at the bottom of all your tines, and that is your starting line for where your measurement's going to start. So, which is kind of hard because it's bladed sideways, but that's okay. I guess I could do it that way. So as long as you're starting, so basically it would look like this. Okay, so that would be like your starting line, if you guys can see that. You would want to start your measurement from here and go to the tip of the tine. And this is his right side, so we're going to start with the right side. Okay, 4.5. G2. It's about 6.5. G3 is 7. G4. 4.5. Okay. To the other side. I wonder if I can just do it this way. It's the flat side. I will try to do it the right way. I'm gonna go from the back because he is seriously hard to measure. 5. I'm gonna try this little guy and see if we can get an inch out of it because that would be really cool. Yep. Exactly an inch, which this point he broke off, so I know it's probably, if I had to guess, it'd probably be 1.5 to 2 inches. Probably 1.5 inches. So hopefully he has that next year because that's cool. I didn't leave room for a little kicker, but I'll do 5 plus 1 for his G1. Okay. 8. 7.5. 4. All right, so now we got the G scores. I'm gonna do mass measurements. So I guess we'll just stick with this one. All right, so your first mass measurement is gonna be around the base. If you're going by official Pope and Young or Boone and Crockett scores, which for those of you who don't know, Pope and Young is anything that's 125 inches or larger up to 160 inches. And then once you hit that, then you're in the Boone and Crockett's, which are just giant deer. But the scoring system is very similar. And like I said earlier, there's times that, so this point would be deducted technically, like they will take inches away if you're going by official rules, simply because he doesn't have that on this side. But I think if it's there, you should count it. So I don't necessarily go by official rules. I go by gross score. So gross is just your overall whatever is there. Net is your official with deductions, and I think there's a few extra measurements that they take into consideration, but this is just your very basic gross score that I'm going to be doing. So when you're taking your base, well, your mass measurements, you kind of just want to go wherever is directly in the middle of each point. So this would be between the base and the G1. Is roughly 4 3/4. Okay. Second one is 3 3/4. Next one, 3 3/4. And then the fourth is your last one. And that is 3 1/4. All right, so that is his left side. That one's all done. Oh no, it's not. I have to do the main beam. And then let's go to this one. He's tough because he's got all these like little stickers that are coming off his base. We're just gonna do it kind of 4 3/4. He's honestly a very symmetrical deer for the most part. He's pretty close on both sides. This would be 3. Yeah, 3 3/4. And he carries his mass very well throughout. Three and a half. Three and a quarter. And he's pretty symmetrical, so he would not have very many deductions. I'd say the biggest one is this inch, and then his G2 is way longer on this side than it is this side. But aside from that, he's pretty symmetrical. All right, so let's do main beams. So for that, what you want to do is start at the outside. So you're going to do the outside. You're going to take your tape on the outside of his main beam, and you're going to want to start at the bottom of the base, essentially right here at the where the pedicle stops. And you're going to go the whole way out around. Okay. Sometimes you gotta like hold your tape so it doesn't move on you. Okay, we're right at 19 inches. So his main beam on his right side is 19. To the left. Right at 19. So he is super symmetrical. Okay, now the only other thing would be his inside spread, which you want to take the widest point possible if you're looking down. If you're looking down at it, you want to take the widest point on the inside to measure across. It's kind of hard on a shed because obviously they move and everything, but if I had to guess where this would be on his head, I tried to line the brow tines where they're pretty much vertical, provided that looks natural. And then the main beams, I like to have them, make sure they're not too low or up too high, which obviously different deer can have different rack shapes, but I would say if I had to guess, this deer is a little bit on the higher side rather than the wide side. So if you would put his bases, probably like 2.5 inches apart. And I only get that measurement because I measured my deer that I shot, and it's about 2.5 to 3 inches between his bases. So if I were to do that, I would guess right around there is how it would look on him. So it's difficult to measure it that way, but what I'm gonna do, if I could get these to stay, that'd be really cool. I'm gonna guess it's around 15 inches inside spread, which is, I would say, a little bit less than average. A lot of deer have about 17, but like I said, I think he's a little high and wide, or a little high and tight rather than wide. So we're gonna put them about there, I would say. Sure. And obviously this is just a guess. Yep, right about, we'll say 15.5. Split the difference. So 15.5 inside spread. All right, so there's your numbers, and I'm gonna add these up and see what we got. Okay, so one final thing I want to mention. So the total he came out as is 132.25, but when you score whitetails, you measure them in eighths. So he would be 132 2/8. That's a pretty good public land deer, especially if he's gonna make it this year. He's obviously gonna get bigger. So I'm very, very excited to hunt him, because if I shoot him, that would be my second biggest buck. Unless he happens to gain at least 10 inches, then he would be tied with my biggest deer, which is 141 2/8. So I'm excited. I'm so ready for this fall. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. So 132 2/8. That's a solid deer, and I am more than happy with these sheds. They're super cool. It's really hard to sit here and look at them knowing that he's out there somewhere just walking around, but I'm excited to see what he turns into, and if I get a chance to hunt him, because that would be really cool. So anyway, thanks for checking into this video, guys. If you liked it, feel free to comment, like, dislike, subscribe if you would like to. And yeah, I'm hoping to get some more content out for you guys. The next couple days and weeks, I'm going to be out scouting for turkeys. So that is coming up quick. I have less than a month to start that, with Missouri being my first state that I'm hunting on April 20th. So I need to go find some land and maybe find some more sheds in the meantime, because that would be cool too. So thanks for checking in, and see you in the next vid.